That way, anyway, so
Oh no, I'm being recorded. Oh
yes.
no,
Oh
no.
no. Oh no. Mr. Hands.
Well,
Um,
hello. How are you, my friend?
oh my gosh. So we're here with Benjamin Adams, and I'm not sure why I wasn't aware of Benjamin Adams. I'm pretty sure I have old printouts from the old Genie server, which was even pre-AOL, if you can believe that. Yes, we are old. We are ancient. We are creaky.
We are the
But
olds.
we are the olds, right? We are the olds they warned you about. You youngsters, you creatures from another planet. I've been so I'm Alex S. Johnson, or we have five viewers, so who are all contributors and fans of us. And
Hello.
and so my special guest today is, and he's gonna, bring the caveat. Benjamin Adams is going to bring the caveat that his Bram Stoker nod is for editorial work with John Palin, but that is
Or
nevertheless,
this.
yes, the Children of Cthulhu, and who only Ramsey Campbell knows how to pronounce that word,
Cthulhu.
Cthulhu. Okay, but he does it. He gives it a special. He's Ramsey fucking
Yeah, yeah,
Campbell,
he
right?
gets like I
So
think a glottal in
he
there or
gets a
something.
little glottal stop, because he's from Liverpool. I mean,
Oh
I
no,
I
that's
am. We're really, and I actually have I have a student who I put into the Bauhaus tribute, which we're going to talk about a little bit, and his name is John Sisson. We're sort
hmm.
of manufacturing him as this as the next, Rath James White or Dennis Cooper, and he's really a nice guy. Oh no, I know I gave it all away, but he's on the opposite side of the mercy from Ramsey Campbell. And we've got another one just popped up recently. I mean, but John, I mean, he sounds exactly like the Beatles. I mean, he sounds like this, and we're making a very sincere attempt to kind of construct him as dark, but he's so not dark, But his prose is chilling. So I put him into the Bauhaus book. There's so many anthologies that we have out now. So I'm just going to do a little uh, triage. I'm going to build a glittering Christmas triage and sparkle with you know, our finest work and our most exceptional contributors. Meaning, I still, with a little nod to capitalism, I still want to make some money because, this has to kind of pay for itself. Otherwise, it's even for a neurodivergent person who can't do math, it's still a little bit crazy. However, when you're talking about something like this, okay, so I just went for I really wish I wasn't banned and blocked from books of horror because, I think we would have potentially millions of readers. If I tell you, I know you know this, but this is for the people who have never heard of us, maybe. So one of our anthologies, which you put out a few months ago, is called White and White, a literary tribute to Bauhaus,
Hmm.
meaning, of course, Bauhaus, the goth band. Well, they're not really goth, but I think Peter Murphy in recent years has kind of come around to embracing that
It is
title.
funny how both Peter and Susie both just hated the term.
Yeah,
And it's like, but embrace your fans at least.
right. Yeah.
Embrace
Collective
the
thought.
fact that we feel that we're part of this movement and that we admire you. What's wrong with that?
There's, there's nothing wrong with that, and I think that Peter certainly come around. Um, so how this happened, you may well ask. Well, thank you for that good question. See, that's a trick that you learn when I was a professor for several years, and I taught at community colleges and kind of lower socioeconomic, in the ghetto in Los Angeles. And so you learn a few things like how to make really, really dumb questions sound incredible. What you do is you rewrite them, and then you
Hmm.
represent them to the students. Somebody says, uh, I'm gonna be missing, like, I'm gonna be out of the country, and when we're doing the final or whatever, do we have to take the final? And then so you have to make it, because then everybody's sort of like gets on the bandwagon, and they think that there's a little window where they can get Professor Johnson to not give the fucking final. And I'm like, okay, so I have to make that sound intelligent, because you have to feed them. Otherwise, they will mutiny on you really quickly. Some of these were gang members. I'm talking about serious, like, we're talking about the Crips and the Bloods.
Hmm.
And this is back in the day. I mean, I'm for a white guy from that I actually, one of my fans, okay, I'm gonna tell you, um, you may not have heard of Terry B. Murphy, but you've probably heard of a little group called NWA.
Hmm. Oh, oh, all right.
And back in the day, so this is about 1998. Okay. So I was doing this magazine called Juggernaut, the magazine of extreme music, right? We had Megadeth, we had Type O Negative, we had, um, I did the cover interview with Glenn Benton from Deicide, and Karen Crisis from Crisis Band, and Gospel of the Witches lately, and Ethel Doeth. Yes, metal in your in your you know metal up your
Metal up your ass.
metal up your ass. Okay, we'll just say it, right. Metal up your ass. Colonoscopy till it hurts, and then and it bleeds back distorted, uh prostate gland, joy. So yes, Karen Crisis. So I did the cover interview with her, and she was, you know, with the our photographer, Debbie Passarelli, um uh, took this photo of Karen on stage, covered in stage blood from Guar. And this resulted in most of the most of the copies of this magazine, Juggernaut, not being distributed, because the distribution people thought it was real blood. And it's like, okay, so you don't get metal at all, right? And so I at the time, there's this a woman named Terry B. Murphy, okay, originally known from back in the day, you know what I'm saying, when in 1990 she put out an album on Eazy-E from NWA, his label, released Power of a Woman, and that had songs like Murder She Wrote, in which the video is awesome. She has the Eazy-E tied up, and she's like
Yeah.
I'm a ruthless bitch. And so and then in 1998 she had like transitioned to doing more like metal. So she was with the band. First it was called Manhole, and then there was another band also called Manhole. This gets into a whole Spinal Tap and Douglas Adams kind of turf, and more with nods to Monty Python on the side, right? You see, you seem like a Monty Python type of guy,
I, I know exactly what you're talking about. Just that sheer absurdity that,
right?
yeah,
Manhole, and now Manhole, right? And it's a woman. It's just, yes.
yeah.
So the jokes write themselves. And then she decided to change the name to the character from a Russ Meyer movie called Faster Pussycat Kill Kill, Tura Satana. And that band
Huge favorite.
was a huge, huge, huge. I mean, I loved, Tura Satana, the whatever the Russ Meyer character and Terry B. Murphy, right? And so at that time, I contacted the record label, Terry B's record label, and for an interview. So I did an in-person interview at this coffee shop in West Hollywood. But I didn't even know that she had originally been with NWA. So I come there to the interview, and she says, Alex, awesome. You're awesome. Sit down. It's like, what? What? She says, you're fucking awesome. And I said, what? What? And Terry B. Murphy, it's great to meet you. And she said, yeah, I got the cover of your magazine on my wall. So it turns out that she was a huge Karen Crisis fan, right? And so I and the people from thank God you're intelligent. See, a lot of people, they look like they're frightened when I start babbling this way, but you get it. So you know,
Well, I mean, I'm interested for one thing. It's the first time that we've spoken, but I think we've both had our Zelig experiences with.
right? For sure, for real though. Yeah, and I want to hear about your zealousness because, yeah, I mean, as problematic as Woody Allen, man, no, Diane Keaton and Annie Hall, just so anyway. So the people responsible for this cover, Amelia G, and I'm sure you're familiar with Amelia G and Forrest Black, of course. And this is a vintage. Oh my God, this got the sheer gothiness of it. Of course, it has my collaborator Nancy Kilpatrick, rest in peace. In is featured in there. So Amelia G and Forrest Black from Blue Blood magazine. They've also done stuff for Rolling Stone and Playboy and everybody else and they did the California Death Rock. Um, uh, there's a coffee table, it's just to drool and die for, right? And they I don't know, commissioned me or whatever to interview. So I got a lot of friends in the dark wave death rock, community, like Jatan Damone, for example. So I
Hey, and I
originally,
was literally just thinking about Christian death. So
right,
you said death rock, and I was like 45 Grave, Christian death.
45 Grave, man. And so I'm also friends with a guy named Lucifer Fulci, who was with, and it's we still are. He's in my Black Sabbath book, and as well as the guitarist from Penis Flytrap, yeah, Leslie Spivey, aka Elvorian von Spivey, and we're still really good friends. We talk, like we did a I did a long ass interview with her on like with the audio for the Small Bear Show before I figured out how to do this kind of stuff. And she okay, so talk about some connections, right? So she turns out that she's also friends with another friend of mine, Sharon Michelle Mescal LaVey, the head
Hmm.
of the International Church of Satan. And um, so anyway, yeah, so and also another who I met through uh Nicole H6. So this is and so Sharon is writing us a piece for the David Bowie book about the are you in that?
No, no, I'm not. And it's funny because you did urge me to write something. And the thing is Bowie is so sacred to me. It's hey, I just saw Lucy's name there.
Lucy,
Um,
yeah, Lucy Taylor, man.
yeah, I was I was invited to write, and after he died, I had another friend who was editing a book of essays, just essays. And even though for 10 years I didn't write any fiction, I still wrote some media essays that got published in some
Yeah.
various publications. and I got asked to write an essay for that. And Bowie literally means so much to me that I feel like I can't touch him. Like
Yeah,
I
that's fair.
that I just can't do it.
Yeah. You know what? And please don't take this as a, in any way, shape, or form as pejorative. But and but we don't need you because we got, who we got. Okay, I'm just gonna say it, man. I'm just gonna say it because you know who we got? We got fucking Caitlin R. Kiernan. You know who we also got? David J. Haskins. You know who we also got? Tony Zanetta. You
I
know
mean,
what I
well,
mean?
there's your Bowie connection right there with Tony Zanetta.
Right?
Whatever David J has to say about Bowie is far more important than what I have to say. I mean, I can, I can talk about the girl who I dated who said that rock and roll suicide saved her life. That come on, give me your hands was the thing that kept her from going over the edge when she listened to the album. And there are other ways that he touched me as well. But at this point, as far as because I would want to write a piece of fiction, and I just can't get my head around how I would do something that could possibly do him justice.
I mean, like, I don't mean to be this way, it makes me seem pretentious and like I'm confident in attitude, but you know we have. And so it's like, okay, so Benjamin Adams, with all due respect, okay, you have a I've been we I addressed this on Facebook earlier, so we were not going to do it here, but I've been open about the fact that in my 30-year history where I've been, I've had praise from everybody from the late great Ray Garton to John Shirley called me the Baudelaire of our time, right? Anna Tambor,
Ray was I spent a
fucking
wonderful hour
right.
chatting with Ray once. Loved
He's so
Ray.
awesome. He was so awesome. And I just like had rave reviews from Cemetery Dance magazine. Brian Keene called me, wrote a history of horror column in 2017 in which he mentioned me alongside like Jeffrey Thomas and Jeff Vandermeer, and he said Alex S. Johnson is Bizarro. So I'm not hurting for accolades. So I really at this point, I've really I've done what I set out to do, and probably. And this is the time to tell the young folks that awards are not important. And the last time I had this conversation was with my collaborator, Sandy DeLuca, who, we did, who's also in the Bowie book, by the way. We did this book called Thunderstruck, a dark poetry collection, and a rave review in Cemetery Dance. And so I just want to finish up the tail end of my story about Terry B. Murphy.
Oh
So
yes,
the and it was along the way I just wanted to, revisit this incredible magazine. So
those
this is
fantastic photographs in there.
right. This is our late, good friend and collaborator, Nancy Kilpatrick, rest in peace. And so anyway, so the Amelia G. And Forrest Black went out to visit wherever Terry was living at the time, and they photographed her. Uh, and and then they came out to see me in Pasadena, and I helped design the cover because it was, the Juggernaut, the magazine of extreme music. And to this date, I keep like bugging, Forrest. It's like I don't have any issue. I don't have my issue of, I also don't. I'm missing my selfie with Lemmy. What the hell, man? Um, you never think someday people are going to be interested in that stuff. But so anyway, that is so a shout out to Terry B. Murphy and Tara Van Flower as our friend, good friend who is a collaborator and contributor to many of our books. From Lycia, of course, she is also the ethereal voice of that that sang on typo negatives, Halloween
Hmm.
in Heaven, right? Halloween in Heaven, Christmas in Hell, right? So that's Terry
Hmm.
Van Flower. Big, big warm shout out to Terry Van Flower. And I'm sorry, I'm just going to go with it because neurodivergent is fuck and also brain disease. So I just got to strike with irony is hot. Um, and so how Collective Paw came about. A Collective Paw is the brainchild. Yes, thank you for the product.
Collective Paw,
Right. Yes.
everybody.
Yes. Buy it. It's now available in Kindle and paperback form from Amazon. And you're friendly. I believe it's also in hardcover form. And it's a wonderful, it's about 263 pages. Now, Vanna, show them what you get in a Collective Paw. I mean, we want people to buy this thing.
Well, you get all these names here on the front cover,
Right. Yes.
plus
And an
all this
exclusive.
wonderful black text on these white
Exactly.
pages.
Right. Yes. Very, very tempting and delicious. But among other things, original, an exclusive piece by Splatterpunk Award winner and recent Small Bear Show guest Jasper Bark, who's also a contributor to Le Fantastique,
Mhm.
a literary tribute to Clive Barker, along with Thomas M. Malafarina, Poppy Z. Bright, Caitlin R. Kiernan, Jonathan fucking Maybury, and
Oh, that's what the F stands for?
what? Yes. Yes, exactly. That's a matter of fact, it is. Um, this is, by the way, this is a advanced, you know, advanced reading copy of Lost Souls by Poppy Z. Bright, and it is curiously enough, it's dedicated. It's to me, I mean, it's not dedicated to me. Shit. You know who dedicated an anthology to me? Thomas Roche, Brothers of the Night. It's a gay vampire anthology that has also Caitlin. You'll notice some recurring motifs here. And who else? Ado Van Belkom,
Van Belkom. Hmm.
right? So who's kind of gearing up back into coming back into play. You know who's writing an original piece for A Collective Paw too?
Oh,
Jonathan Mayberry, who just had to cancel Thursday's show. Otherwise, we were going to have him on Thursday. But
you can't get a stronger name in the field
I
currently
don't
than
think you
Jonathan.
can, right? And so what happened was that so our friend Ellen Mabey is a world world renowned poet. She was also an actress. She has her SAG card because she was in the movie Dancing at the Blue Iguana, with some of the other stars in that movie. Daryl Hannah, Jennifer Tilly. She was in a scene with Sandra Oh, and she basically plays herself. They created an entire character for Ellen so she could read her own poetry. That's how big she is. You know who is a huge fan of hers? Henry Rollins is her biggest fan. Not only is he her biggest fan, he published her. You know who edited the book that Henry Rollins published?
No, no, you're keeping me on tenor hooks.
On Tentacles, right? The woman who introduced who introduced Ellen to Rollins was Exene Cervenka. And so yeah, and her at the time she was married to a guy named Viggo Mortensen, right? And so he did the cover photography. and the author photo. So this is The Cowardice of Amnesia by Ellen Mabey. And that's Viggo Mortensen's work. And they write the cover art and author photographs. And it's got
Small world, man.
it's a small world, man. So in it's a long ass story about how Ellen Mabey encouraged my writing, and 2012 invited me. She and then executive director of Beyond Baroque Literary Arts Center, Venice Beach, California, Richard Modiano, invited me over to be a featured speaker at Beyond Baroque, which has such legends as like Dennis Cooper, Wanda Coleman, Iris Berry, who's also a friend of mine. They've read at Beyond Baroque. It's Amanda Gorman got her start at Beyond Baroque. Exene and John Doe met there, right? And so I was like, holy fucking shit, it's Beyond Baroque. And I'm friends with Ellen Mabey. So we've been friends since 2012. And we've talked ever since. We've done episodes of the Small Bear Show. We've talked for 9.5 hours straight on Zoom, and it's all up there. I don't edit things. I just put it up there. So it's a really great archival material. And so she, excuse me, she wrote this poem called Whiff of Wonder, which contains the line, a collective paw. And it's short enough that I will read this. So, collective paw poem. It is, now I'll try to find it. Whiff of Wonder, page 14. And this is the poem that inspired the imprint, A Collective Paw. Whiff of Wonder by Ellen Mabey. There's such a pain in the world, like we all stepped on a thumbtack at the same time. And we can either take a step forward or a step back. But there's something in the collective paw of the world, thank you, um, holding us up. For some, it's music. For some, it's a rainbow. For some, it's nature. For some, it's, oh my God.
It's a back scratcher.
Oh, yeah, but, oh, yeah, man. Oh, wow. Wow. Um, the world must contain wonder when it feels all the breath and wishes contained. Even a whiff of wonder at the right moment in time can do wonders living in the world. And so I and my partner, Aaliyah Celeste Williams, we wrote this book. These are all available for purchase on Amazon. And this got a rave review in Cemetery Dance. So it's good because Cemetery Dance does not just
They don't play
dispense,
around.
rave reviews, easily. Shout out to Joshua Gage at Cemetery Dance. And anyway, and Brian Keene, also at Cemetery Dance, and just a big warm squeezy hug to everybody. um, but so I and Aaliyah were watching an Ellen Mabey, interview for, I mean, her poetry reading for inspiration, and we heard this whiff of wonder, and this the line at Collective Paw just it stuck out for us. And so I asked Adrian Baldwin, who's our graphics guy, and he's also an author, and he's written for the BBC. Now he's kind of semi-retired. He just mainly works for Phantasmagoria magazine. And so we asked our, Adrian to design a logo, of the Collective Paw to be a sub-imprint of Nocturnicorn Books. He came up with this wonderful little logo that I use for as my profile picture on Facebook. And then I kept thinking and thinking and thinking because it's so resonant, right? And I did all this, had all these shows with Ellen, and then I kept thinking, wow, there's something in the Collective Paw. And one day I got a message from Nicole H6, and Nicole was like, so I love this collective paw idea, Alex. I really want to contribute to that. And I was like, hey, Nicole, who's the daughter of Nikki Sixx from Motley Crue, by the way, who, is just an amazing person. She's a really beautiful human being. She, she started out writing for the IDW. She's been in Weird Tales. She's a close friend of Mayberry's, right? And she's also contributed to she created this thing called Womanthology, and which is a kind of a graphic novel, all woman graphic, sort of like comics collective, as well as having written books like Some Fucked Up Shit, and she's a multiple contributor to our anthologies. And so, yeah, she was like, "Well, I would like to contribute to a collective, Paul." And I said, "Well, it's not really anything like it's not a book." She said, "Well, could it be a book?" I said, "Yeah, because it's a great idea for a book." I said, "Well, what would you like it to be about?" She said, "Because she works with Stray Cats Alliance, um, the Stray Cats. That was a band in the 80s or whatever." And Lemmy Kilmister to Alex, you who Lemmy. Um, anyway, I had a band with Slim Jim Phantom from the Stray Cats called the Head Cat, from Head Cat, right? And so I said, okay, cool. The Stray Cats. It's something like Stray Cats Rescue in LA. And I said, oh, she's also a screenwriter and an actress, and she's been in a movie by James Wan, and um, she recently wrote a movie called Demon Fever, which she's also in. So, and I said, okay, cool, let's do it. And I thought, who can we get? At this point, it's we have almost like a stable of authors. We have people like Anna Taborska, who's just a sweetie pie, she's just one of the nicest people on the planet. And she'll email me and say, "Oh, Alex, I I just want to make sure that you have." And it's like she'll say things that I have like enough material from her because she's concerned that I'm not, that I don't have enough, material. And she said, "Well, don't publish it all at once." And I'm like, "Oh my effing God, you're Anna Taborska, like has been like nominated for the Stoker's like 5 times, right? She's a award-winning filmmaker. She's worked with Rutger Hauer, and she was in the Best Horror of the Year, uh, with along with Stephen King and Peter Straub. And so, and it's like, oh, Alex, hello, it's Anna, love and kisses, and I'm like, hugs and kisses, Anna Taborska. I'm like, holy shit, what did I do, man? So on the one hand, I'm like, I've been canceled like 5 or 6 times from horror. I've been banned from books of horror. They're invisible to me, and I've been accused of everything you can possibly imagine, and yet I still keep bouncing back. So one of the,
Well,
yeah,
people, there are broken people out there who they make stuff up to support their own point of view. Um, for some reason, they'll just decide that, especially if you're neurodivergent, and it doesn't mesh well with their own neurodivergence.
right, yeah,
They'll cut people dead and just, that's it. You're out of here. I mean, and to be fair, I mean, I've done it myself in the past. There are people who I wound up cutting out of my life, not under any circumstances that I think like what you're talking about, but it was just, I don't know. I'm going off on a tangent.
That's good. That's good. We
But
encourage
it,
that.
part of this actually kind of ties into to why I actually wound up spending 10 years away from the field. And actually, I mean, that can actually let's loop this back around to how I started and how that led up to me
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
working with you.
Yeah. Thank you.
um,
Somebody had to do it.
I was a heavily neurodivergent kid, um, diagnosed with ADD in the early 1970s when this stuff was still, still really new and fresh, and they didn't know how to approach it. They weren't really looking at autism as something that affected people who were otherwise high functioning.
Right.
It's at this point, looking back at it, I would have been diagnosed with Asperger's if that was
Yeah.
a had really been a thing in 1972. And I was placed on different medications, Ritalin, Mellaril, things like that. And I actually the first piece I sent you, the piece for the Clive Barker book, which I think is absolutely the most horrifying thing that I've ever written. I mean, just I think utterly blood chilling without the need for blood.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
but you know the scene I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Um, that's life experience. So it was not a great childhood. It was not a great childhood. And as I grew up, I rubbed people the wrong way. I I would make friends pretty quickly because I presented well at first, and then my oddities would start pushing people away, and I would get, oh, hey, that guy's weird. I would get so that kind of thing happened a lot. So, and even felt, I felt the character in the story I sent you was an only child, but I actually had three older brothers and an older sister, and I felt alienated from all of them, everybody in the family. And although I'm on good terms with them, and I love them, it's just I don't think that they've ever understood exactly what it was like to be me,
Right. Yeah.
and to deal with what I was going through. Um, so time traveled on in my teens. I started writing for fanzines. You know, just did the kind of stuff that a geek did, and but also got into music heavily. Rock and roll saved my life. Um, Heavy metal saved my life. Punk saved my life. Post punk saved my life. Um, I remember, I mean, in the US, we came around to Bauhaus slightly later, so the first couple of albums weren't released here at all, and we got Sky's Gone Out and Burning from the Inside on A&M Records in like 1982, 83. So that was about when I really first heard them. I was still in high school, and I lived in a farm town, so it wasn't like I could just go down to the import store to buy this stuff. Um, but it immediately spoke to me. There was this immediate like strum of my heartstrings when I heard
Right.
it,
Yeah.
and I thought this is how I feel, because what a lot of people seem to miss about it was that not only not only was it dark and gloomy, but it was goofy too.
I need to have a visual, so I'll just be right back. So,
Oh,
please
sure.
please continue.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Well,
It was
I'll be getting the visual for you for people.
there was a sense of humor as well, which really appealed to me because I'm very much into the humor of the absurd. So later on, in my late teens, um, and early 20s, I wound up involved in this pen pal circuit of goths around the U.S. and around the country. well, around the U.S., around the world, and at one point, I probably had 30 to 40 pen pals who I it's fantastic, and I very much wish I'd been involved. Um,
Well, you're still, I mean, you're part of the beautiful downgrade, right?
yes, I am, and
That's the
I'm
sequel,
very,
yeah.
very happy. Because the beautiful downgrade story is actually about what I was just speaking about. It's about that pen pal circle.
Right.
Um, and in a way, Judith from that story is actually a feminine version of myself. But anyway,
This is the one that I didn't have the heart to send to Billy Martin because I didn't want to offend him, and but this is my like this is my cartoon of Billy Martin, and you know, and this Bela Lugosi.
so so anyway, I wound up marrying one of these pen pals.
Oh wow.
I traveled across the country and met a whole lot of people, and
Mhm.
I met this girl in Chicago, and we got along like a house on fire, and we're still
Yeah.
friends.
Yeah.
She it just she she was gay. She always was gay,
Yeah.
and she shouldn't have. You know, we were terrific friends. We shouldn't have gotten married. That's I love that art. That's
Thank you.
fantastic.
Thank you.
But I moved to Chicago, and in Chicago, I started writing more fiction, and I went to an open mic night where Robert Weinberg, the editor, was one of the guests,
Wow, yeah.
and he heard my story, and he asked if I would be interested in submitting to one of the anthologies that he
Ah,
was putting together for Barnes
ah,
and Noble.
ah.
Now these I know it was pure luck. It was entirely just pure luck. Um, at the time, Barnes and Noble had their own publishing imprint, and they would have these books on sale. These beautiful, thick hardcover books. Um, love it. They would be on sale in dump piles near the store entrance. So 100 wicked little witch tales, 100 vicious little vampire tales.
I nearly got into that one. I think there may have been the only reason I didn't get into the hundred little witches is because of the explicit sex, but otherwise, yeah. They
I
said
had
they said we like this story, but we can't publish it.
I had two in that. I also had two in the vicious vampires.
Nice.
Those earned out royalties for over 10 years
Wow.
because Barnes and Noble sold a shit ton of them. The
Nice.
market was completely different than it is now.
Yeah.
They had these hardcovers selling for $4 or $5 near their exit. People bought them as stocking stuffers, just as things to grab. The big one was when they did 365 scary stories,
Oh wow.
which was they were all pieces that were 750 words or less, all flash fiction.
Right.
And I sold 7 stories to that one. And these were all edited by Bob Weinberg, um, Stefan Zemanowitz, and Marty Greenberg. So that's another one that I wish I'd already been in closer touch with you because I would have loved to have been involved with that. So I wound up being able to become a member of HWA with these professional sales. Made other sales. I sold a lot of Cthulhu mythos stuff in the 90s because it was an easy market to get into. What a book. What a fantastic story and book that. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
That's beautiful stuff. Um, so here I am. I've got my little career going, and then I wrote. Uh, Bob Weinberg asked me to write a piece for the HWA newsletter, and I was like, "Well, what should I write about?" And he says, "Oh, well, you know, you know what's going on with these goths, and that's really kind of that's getting to be a big thing right now. It's what Kathy Koja writes about and what
Yeah,
Lizzie Bright writes about,
exactly.
and I was like, well, I identify with the movement, even, I don't exactly look like it, but it's the way I feel in my heart. My wife she was a complete goth with dyed black, crimped black hair,
Nice.
white makeup, kohl around her eyes. So I was in the intersection.
Right. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely in the intersection. And so I wrote this piece, and immediately, but it was based on my experiences knowing these suburban goths.
Oh
It
yeah,
was
yeah,
it was
yeah.
a much lighter scene. The drug use was maybe a little bit of ecstasy, maybe,
Right,
a
yeah.
couple of hits of acid,
Right.
a little weed. And so the people who were really serious, um,
Yeah.
thought it was laughable, thought the
Right.
piece was utterly laughable. And I can't blame them. I can't blame them. But then there was a lot of back and forth, um, a lot of laughter about it, and it got back to me, and it was hurtful. It was a bit of a drag, and it kind of took the fun out of what I was doing.
Right.
I didn't have enough self-confidence at that point to be like, fuck all y'all.
Right. Yeah.
That takes a while to build up, and having been as ND as I was,
Right. Yeah.
yeah, it was easier for me to start to step away than to, I didn't, it just kind of made me feel less than welcome. I,
Yeah.
but then I moved to Seattle though, and I met John Palin in person.
Oh, nice.
And that was when I pitched the Cthulhu Mythos book to him. And I'm going to pull the cover up that again. We're going to have dueling stuff on the screen. So,
Yes.
so this volume, I suggested to him, saying, I want this to be, I think that we need to have something like Harlan Ellison's Dangerous Visions,
Yes.
but for the Cthulhu mythos.
Right.
Something that really pushes the envelope, that is just gonzo and out there and beyond what anybody has ever seen. And John says, that is a fucking great idea.
Yes.
We need to do that. If you want me to be your co-editor, I've got connections. I can get it pitched. Let's do it. And I thought, my God, fantastic. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So he did. And he started at the top. I was like, oh, we ought to go with such and such publisher or so and so. And he's like, no, I'm going to start at the top. I'm going to pitch it to Del Rey, because Del Rey is publishing all of Lovecraft anyway. And they keep their stuff in print, so it'll earn out. It's this we need to go to the top. So he pitched it to Del Rey, and it fucking sold pretty much immediately.
Nice.
And then they said, there are a few things.
Uh-oh.
There can't be any sex.
Uh-oh.
There can't be any super brutal violence,
Uh-oh.
because our main market for Lovecraft is young teenage boys.
Oh,
And
yeah.
we
Okay.
don't want their parents picking this up and getting pissed off.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh shit, that is not at all what the point of this had been. So we still did it, and I definitely pushed for some of the, we split up reading the slush, and we each, we each gave ourselves, it was like, veto power over what the other one is choosing,
Yeah.
except there, we each get two stories that neither one of us can veto.
Did Palin put out Horror for the Next Millennium?
I forget if that was John or not.
Okay, because I'm pretty sure that was the my review for Wet Bones got me on the radar of Caitlin R. Kiernan. Actually, we'd been friends before, but she actually put my review up on her blog. It was pretty. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
Oh no,
Yeah,
like John. I mean, John was he was the perfect guy to go to with this. We just wound up with the wrong
yeah,
publisher because
yeah.
his whole thing, he was the guy who was writing stories about skull fucking. He was
I remember John was one of my favorite people to see at cons. Yeah,
so. But anyway, I there were a couple of really really bizarre stories that we got in that I was like,
yeah,
that is in line with what I had originally wanted.
yeah,
So these are my veto free stories.
yeah.
And so I'm really really proud that we published those. And there's just a lot of superb writers in this. We we had Yvonne Navarro,
I love Nirvana Navarro. She's awesome. Yeah.
um, China Mieville,
Of
Caitlin
course. Yeah.
Kiernan, of course,
Of course.
Alan Dean Foster,
Alan Dean Foster. Yeah.
Bobby Z.
The
Bright,
Masters. Yeah. The
you
Masters.
know,
Yeah.
Pugmire. Of
Pugmire.
course, you had to have Pugmire if you were
Rest in
doing a
peace, man.
mythos anthology.
Yeah. He was a beautiful
Uh,
cat.
and Paul Finch, who is now a bestseller in the UK. He writes horror and crime
Hmm.
fiction, and he just
Yeah.
released a crime novel that went straight to the top of the bestseller lists in the UK.
Nice.
So absolutely fantastic contributor list. But the book itself, because of the constraints that was put on it, wound up not being what I had originally hoped.
Wow.
And so that also kind of took the wind out of my sails a bit.
Yeah. So
So my
I just want to clarify. So was it or was it not? You said it was originally intended for a like little kids and that's what caused it to be sort of constrained
I wanted it to be adult. I wanted to
right,
go
yeah.
I wanted a small press
Right, yeah.
that would, not be worried about anything, but
Yeah.
we went with Del Rey, and
Which is Del Rey. I mean,
it's
yeah.
Del
So
Rey. It's like, okay,
right.
great. You publish Lord of the Rings. I'm not going to say no to you.
Right.
But at the same time, it was bowdlerized. It was absolutely
Aw.
just not at all what I had originally intended.
Yeah.
And but and John shrugged and he was like, yeah, but everybody got paid. They got paid a good rate. We each made a couple of $1,000,
Nice.
which was really really good.
Yeah.
So it was what it was, but it's still because I still had this, and I still do to this day have this autistic need for things to be fair.
I know, right?
Something about it just struck me as not being fair. It was like, but that's not what it was supposed to be. And that, as I said, it kind of took the wind out of my sails with my writing a bit as well. So I started not writing as much, and then I in the early part of the 2000s, I wound up kind of accidentally stumbling my way. Um, I had always been a Doctor Who fan,
Oh, nice.
and,
Oh, that's right.
and
You've written official Doctor Who stuff.
I wound up.
Oh, wow.
I was on
Oh, wow.
I was on a Doctor Who forum,
I love you,
and
man.
and the writer Paul Cornell was on there, and he was editing an anthology for Big Finish Productions, who had the license for Doctor Who short fiction at the time from the BBC. And I wrote to him, and I pitched, and he said, well, actually, this book is full, and but I'm passing your information along to them. And then somebody else over there reached out to me and said, would you be interested in doing something? And I did. And so I wound up doing a couple of stories for them, which, that's fantastic. It's nice to be a part, however tangentially, it's nice to be a part of that. That's part of, the zealousness of
Of
my work.
course. Of course. Yes. Beautiful
Uh,
thing, man. I mean, Doctor Who is like, it's part of my primordial, like, aspirational DNA as far as being a writer, you know?
no,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's what I started watching around 1972 or 73 when they were showing
Yeah.
John Pertwee on
Oh,
KCET in Los Angeles.
exactly. Yeah.
So I mean, it's in my DNA.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was one of the things that allowed me to escape when my shitty childhood.
Yeah. I can so relate to that shit.
So,
Yeah.
that was fantastic. But
Yeah.
then after that, I kind of drifted away from things. I wound up with, realizing that I was autistic, diagnosed with autism, with what would have been Asperger's before it was removed from the DSM-4.
Right.
So I functioning, yay me.
Yeah.
That's
I, I, I,
that's
I'm,
super helpful.
I'm starting to think that I may be too, because, all of my friends are autistic when all of your friends are autistic. And like,
Oh, we flock together. We're a
right,
flock.
like, do you know Carmela Voyas in Scotland?
No,
She,
no.
but she created the Starblood series, and she's also a multiple contributor. Yeah,
If I'm not looking in the right place, I keep
yeah,
forgetting where the camera is
oh
on my
yeah,
screen because I don't zoom very often.
yeah. And Ellen Mabey is certainly on the spectrum. Emily Frank, who's our close mutual friend and also publishes or did a graphic novel thing with uh, Lansdale. She's very, very autistic, and I think that we're the new people. We're the new people.
Well, gosh, somebody needs to be.
Will the,
Anyway,
will the first new person please stand up?
so this happened, and I just started thinking, God,
Yeah,
what? I started having imposter syndrome,
yeah,
and I was saying to myself, well, what right do I have to write even about these imaginary people if I'm not like most people? What if
yeah,
I'm not a typical person, why do I have the right to be writing about anybody?
yeah.
And then shortly after that, I got seriously ill, um, had diverticulitis, which burst, and I
Oh
wound
my
up
gosh, I'm so sorry.
so I wound up having
Squeezins.
I had thanks I had emergency surgery, was laid up in a hospital and in recovery for months. Had to relearn how to walk again with a group of old people, bounce a balloon around and
Yeah,
physical
yeah, yeah,
therapy.
yeah.
And even had a temporary colostomy bag
Oh wow.
for several months before they could reverse that. So I was very ill, and that literally at that point I wound up blocked for over a decade.
I'm so sorry. Wow.
Could not write,
That's
could not write a
awful.
blessed thing. Then early this year, very early this year, my friend Samantha Lee Howe, she's married to David Howe, and who's basically Telos Publishing in the UK, and
Okay,
they
yeah.
publish a lot of nonfiction books about science fiction television
Yeah.
and horror movies and things like that. And they're very, very good friends of ours. They were actually our uh, he was actually my best man, and
Nice.
Samantha was the maid of honor at my wedding.
Nice.
She invited me, and she's a published bestseller of her own. A movie's been made from her work.
So
Um,
we need to hook up with her because I need to conscript her in some way, shape, or form. Yeah.
well, I think she's on your friends list. To
Okay,
be
cool.
honest, you've got a large friends list.
I know.
Uh, um, but she asked if I would write something for an anthology that she was putting together a charity anthology
Yeah.
for breast cancer awareness for the Pink Ribbon Foundation, and it was called Criminal Pursuits. This
Hold,
is
hold,
me.
hold, hold that thought because I have a visual for you. That actually you can continue because we're going to have another dueling.
Well, this is the book I'm talking about right here. So we're dueling. This is Criminal Pursuits. This is me,
I know,
which is the book that she invited me to.
and I need to get mine because it feels like I'm like that character Penelope in Saturday Night Live is like somebody brings up a subject and then she says I invented basketball, but I'll be right back because I did one too. So I mean I didn't personally, but I'm in one. Um,
Well, I'm going to go on with
yeah, please.
what I was saying, which is the theme of the anthology tied into something that I had started writing back in the 90s. And I suddenly realized how I could finish the story.
Yeah,
So it broke me out of my yeah,
Ellie Church from Trauma Films. Yeah, this was also for breast cancer research for
fantastic.
the
There's the
pink
pink
thing.
ribbon
Yeah,
right there.
Qui
Yeah,
Fradica. Yeah, so
see, good charity.
vaginal
It's good to
farts,
be part of.
all good.
It, so I finished this, sent it off to her, and she bought it. And then I couldn't stop writing again. And it's just been pouring out of me. Not a single day has gone since then that I haven't written. I've written, I've managed to write two short novels in that time, a novella, and over 25 short stories.
That's so awesome. I'm so happy for you, man.
And you've bought five of the short
I mean,
stories.
when we say bought, the contracts have not gone out yet, so you will receive your honorarium when we do the contracts for the ones that aren't charity initiatives.
Okay,
So
let me change
yeah,
that. You've
yeah,
you've given me you've given me enthusiastic yes
yes,
emails.
yes,
So
very very
which
much.
is fine.
Okay.
I'm not not so much worried. I've been producing more. It's like where are the high paying markets? It's
Yes.
like, oh, you've got a few magazines
Yeah.
that open for submissions a couple of times a year,
Yeah.
and that everybody wants to get into because of course everybody wants to get that check. What are you supposed to do if you're just writing so much stuff
Yeah.
that you submit it to the small press. The
Yeah.
small press
Exactly.
has it's there's nothing wrong with the small press. The small
Nothing
press
wrong
is
with them.
admirable.
Yeah.
It's where the envelope gets pushed.
It's the heart and soul for me, and I don't think it's controversial to say that the small press is the heart and soul of our beloved genres, or whatever you want to call it, because like I was inspired, back in the day, um, when I started out really early, the first work that I had was I had an opportunity. I was offered the chance to publish a collection by David G. Was it David G. Barnett from Necro Publications, and
Yeah, yeah.
and at first I was like, because I'd had work in Blood Songs, and I was like, wow. Because I asked him and he said, I was just so surprised. Talk about imposter syndrome, right? I'm still like thinking, I'm still getting used to the sensation when I see, names like John Shirley or, Anna Taborska or Caitlin R. Kiernan or Poppy Z. Bright on the cover of something. I get a little twinge of envy and I'm like, gosh, I wish I could be, in a book with these people. And I realize that not only am I, have I been published alongside, them and Ramsey Campbell and Joe Hill and,
Mm-hmm.
but and Charles Bukowski, but I published all of those people, so it's like talk about I really interested in learning more about imposter syndrome, how you experienced it.
it was I honestly just felt like everything that I'd managed to do had just been purely by luck,
Yeah.
and that I actually had no real talent,
Wow.
and which is bullshit.
It is bullshit. We need
It's
to
bullshit. I
we
can
need
write.
to we need to assassinate that, right? We need to like take a William S. Burroughs, shotgun to that.
Well, I managed to get rid of it this year. That's the thing that happened.
Squeezins.
Finally managed to bury it, and
Yeah.
then you were on my friends list, and I
Yes.
mean you must have sent a request to me a while back, and I see a lot of stuff in my feed that I don't really pay attention to, and you had earlier calls, and I was like, oh, I don't know what if I could do anything for that. Then the Clive Barker call popped,
Yes. Hmm.
and I thought, oh, I know what to do.
Yeah.
This is this is this is where I can send that thing that I've been thinking about writing for 30 years.
Wow. That's so beautiful.
And I wrote it. I bashed that thing out. I bashed that thing out in a day. And
Some
I sent it to
some
you.
some more of my goth cuties. Sorry.
No pierced navel though on her.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
You have to fix it right now.
Yes. I-
Anyway, so I sent it to you, and by God, I received your enthusiastic yes within 15 minutes of
Yes,
when
of
I sent
course.
it to you.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
It was the fastest acceptance I have
Yes.
ever had for something that
Yeah.
was not commissioned.
Right. Yeah. Well, you know what? And at the risk of tooting my own horn once again, in Australia they call it big noting yourself. Okay, like I don't know when this was, about 5, 6 months ago. I got a message from Craig Thomas, the brother of Scott and Jeffrey Thomas, and the uncle of Jade Thomas, who's also a contributing author. She's 15 years old, and she's a remarkable poet. And he thanked me because the Thomases are just incredibly nice people. And he thanked me for sharing. Somebody had, I think, it was a poly, whatever. She's a transgender horror author. Polly, her first name is Polly anyway. Had done a short film that was based on one of Jeff's short stories. And and so I shared that. Because I share stuff all the time, and most people don't even acknowledge it or even see that. But Craig did, and he messaged me and he said, "Thank you for sharing Jeff's movie." And I said, "Wow, you're really nice. You all are too nice." And he said, "Yeah, well, it was just like I don't know, he was just like really cool." And I said, "Hey, Craig, Thomas, you're part of the Thomas clan. Are you an author too?" And he said, "No, and I'm a librarian." And I said, "Well, that's cool. Where do you library at?" He said, "Harvard." And so I was just like, okay, wow, I didn't know when somebody says librarian, you don't think, Harvard University, you don't think the Widner Library. Um, and so we got to talking, and within like 15 minutes, he said, "So you should send me some stuff. You should send me some of your books." I was like, "Wait, what? So don't you need to get permission from somebody, whatever?" And he says, "No, I'm a senior cataloger at the Widner Library at Harvard University, and you've been pre-vetted." So I was like, "What? Wait, wait, wait." So for somebody with imposter syndrome, I still, to this day, there's a part of me that says, "Well, these people, they're just super, super nice." But when somebody like Anna Taborska endorses you, when Brian Keene is not exactly a nice person, but he endorsed me, right? And you know, in cemetery dance, right? And so you think, okay, so nice and not nice people have endorsed me. So there must be something to that. So the imposter syndrome, I think, is related to what's called there's a term, a sociological term for, people who are incredibly incompetent, believe that they're super, super, super smart. And the reverse is true.
Oh yeah, done. That's Dunning-Kruger.
Dunning-Kruger. So I think a lot of autistic people and people, neurodivergent people, let's say the umbrella term,
Have the reverse.
have the reverse. We think that people are just being super, super nice to us and maybe feel a little bit sorry for us, so that we, when, but I'll tell you a story. Oh my God, I'm making it about myself again. Well, see, this had to do with like when I first met Caitlin R. Kiernan, and she said, "Would you like to take a look at my new book that I just wrote called The Five of Cups?" And I said, yo, yeah, I'd be glad, man. So she sent me a floppy disk. You know, imagine this is how old we're talking about. This is more than 30 years ago. She sent me a floppy disk, and I was like, "Wow, cool." And so it it wouldn't be published until like 2000 something or other, into the 2000s. But I actually lost that copy. And, you know, if it were anybody else, but it's Caitlin R. Kiernan, who's actually extremely, extremely like gracious and old-fashioned because Southern, people are terrified of her. And I'm like, well, she said, okay, I'll send you another one. And then, and she asked me my opinion when I first met her we were both at the World Horror in Atlanta. And I was like, I mumbled something because I hadn't actually read it. So I had two copies. I lost one, and I couldn't believe it that I just thought, well, first of all, nobody knew who she was. And I was just a fan of her prose. But that just shows, right? So somebody of that stature actually wanted my opinion of her novel, and I didn't believe it. The same thing happened with Lucy Taylor. Lucy Taylor sent me a copy of um, the the something journeys, fatal journeys, and she actually wanted a blurb from me, and I was so like, Lucy Taylor wants a blurb from me. Well, that's not probable. So, I've done stupid things where I still feel bad about that. So I didn't send her a blurb because, because I didn't believe it. I didn't believe. I was like, Lucy Taylor, you know, is a genius. So, you
The
know what I mean?
thing I'll tell you, something that's a great leveler for this kind of thing. And part of my problem is that I didn't do it for a
Yeah,
long time,
yeah,
is going to cons
right, yeah,
and sit and actually being social with these people.
right,
And
yeah.
the one that really that blows my mind, and I'm not saying this to toot my horn, because it there were only a few interactions, but it still is literally the most, to me, it's the most amazing thing that ever happened in my life. At World Horror in Atlanta, and I believe this was in 1996.
Yeah, it was.
It would have been, I think it was the very, very same con where I actually, because I was involved in HWA and knew Bob Weinberg and such, I was still kind of hyped on that, and they were like, "Oh, you should try to get Poppy Z. Bright to join because she keeps not joining." And I went to her and tried to proselytize
Yeah,
HWA,
yeah,
and Poppy, now Billy,
yeah.
was like, "No,
I'm not,
I'm
I'm
not
not,
much of a
I'm
joiner,"
not a joiner. Yeah.
which really
Yeah,
just stuck in my mind. And
yeah,
fair play, absolutely fair play. At the same con, Harlan Ellison was a guest, and I went to one of his panels, which was hilarious. And of course, there were a couple of people who asked stupid questions during the panel, and this being Harlan, he
Yes.
eviscerated them. And I went up to him after the panel and just started chatting with him on a level that worked for him somehow.
Yeah, cool.
And we became chatty during the convention. And
Oh,
we
I
would
love that.
when we would run into each other, he'd be like, "Hey, how's it going?" And and just chat.
Yeah,
And I'm sitting and I'm going, this is Harlan Ellison, and he's treating me
right. Yeah.
like I'm an equal.
Yes, exactly.
And it just absolutely it was mind blowing to me. And at the same can okay now I've got a couple of great little Harlan stories to tell. At the same convention, in the writers' green room one night, there was a green room specifically for members of HWA. So I'm in there, and I'm chatting with Adam Troy Castro and other writers. Well, there's this guy in a Star Trek costume, a Captain Kirk costume with these huge sweat stains under the pits,
Oh, shit.
who he joined HWA specifically so that he would have access to the green room,
Oh my God.
because they didn't limit it only to writers. It was for to the active members. The affiliate members also had access to the green room. So this guy is in there, and of course everybody's kind of like, "What is the deal? Why is this guy in here?" And
Ah,
and Harlan comes in, and he tells an anecdote about Gene Roddenberry. Well, this guy does not realize who Harlan is, and he gets all offended. Like, how can you say that about Gene Roddenberry? Who are you? And you hear everybody else in the room just goes because they think that Harlan is about to just rip this guy's innards out
Yeah.
verbally. And Harlan just goes, "Me, I'm nobody."
Aw.
He gets up and he walks out of the room,
Aw.
and nobody knew what to say. Somebody's like, "Do you know who that was?" And he's like, "No, I asked him who he was." And they're like, that was Harlan Ellison, and
Carl
you're lucky
Nelson.
that you're alive.
Yes, right.
um but at that same convention, uh I mentioned to Harlan that I had seen him on Tom Snyder's Tomorrow Show
Yeah.
fairly recently, and he had been taught, and Harlan had spoken about the an earthquake that had hit Los Angeles that had destroyed some of his items.
Yeah.
And he mentioned he held up a broken Foghorn Leghorn coffee cup,
Oh, wow.
and he was like, "If anyone knows where I can get one of these,
Cool.
I would like to replace it." I had one,
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Oh,
and
wow. Wow.
I told him, and he was very excited, very excited. He gave me his mailing address.
Nice. Nice.
And so when I got home to Chicago, I sent it to him. A few days later, I'm getting ready to go to. Well, actually, I haven't woken up yet.
Yeah.
We were a couple of hours behind
Right.
California, or no, we would have been ahead. It doesn't matter. He called me in the morning.
Ah,
I'm asleep. I kind of, vaguely hear the phone ring, and then my wife is shaking me awake, saying, "Harlan Ellison's on the phone for you."
ah.
And I get on the phone with him, and he starts chatting with me like I'm one of his oldest friends in the world.
Oh, that's so cool.
Now, I mean, it turned out later that he had his own neurodivergent issues. Which would he there were the times where he was completely manic and kind of out of control, times when he was super friendly, times when he was very, very angry. And apparently I just happened to hit on it. This happened to be one of the great times. The conversation was absolutely amazing. At the time, I lived in Chicago, not far off Lakeshore Drive, but I managed a record store up in Evanston, Illinois.
Yeah.
And we started talking about that, and he was like, "Oh, I worked in a sweatshop, writing, erotica in a building on
Nice.
in Evanston." It turned out that the building that he wrote in on the second floor, churning out erotica to help pay bills,
Yeah.
was the same building that my record store was in.
Holy shit. So badass.
It was absolutely amazing. And then a few days after that, a huge box showed up with a whole bunch of signed hardcovers
Ah, so cool.
in return for the mug. And so
So cool.
that's my Harlan Ellison story. It's not that, I didn't become close friends with him like some other people who I knew did, but this was one of my biggest writing idols. I mean,
Yeah.
he wrote like a fucking angel. He wrote like a man possessed by touched by God. And he treated me as an equal, as a human being. There were other people not far off of my own level as newbies, who treated me like shit. You know.
Yeah.
Then, over the last 15 years, I wound up attending not a lot of writing cons. While I was blocked, I was attending. There was one con a year that my wife and I would attend, which is the Gallifrey One convention in Los Angeles. Big Doctor Who convention. Lots of the actors, writers, and so on would show up. And actually, my wife and I were actually married there in one.
Nice. That's
Um,
beautiful.
and she was given away by Fraser Hines, who played Jamie, one of the Second Doctor's companions.
Nice.
And our ring bearer was a young man who had a starring role on the Sarah Jane Companions, which was one of the spin-off shows.
Oh wow. That was one of
Um,
one of my favorite companions too. Yeah.
and Fraser, actually, I mean, Fraser is a friend of mine on Facebook, and when I was in the UK recently, we had lunch with him. Um,
Nice.
and quite a few of the actors at the Doctor Who conventions come down, and there's something that we call LobbyCon, and I'm sure most conventions have their own version of a
Yeah.
LobbyCon, which is everybody just sitting around in the hotel lobby,
Right.
having drinks, not the private room parties, but this is just a bigger thing that just kind of takes over the lobby. And it's the kind of thing you turn around and, like, oh, there's Colin Baker, oh,
Right. Oh
there's
my
Peter
God.
there's
Yeah.
Peter Davison.
Ah,
and
legends, man.
and knowing that these are people too,
Yeah.
and that they actually like to spend time with fans and with people who admire them. but not because they want the admiration. They actually they just enjoy the party. They enjoy having the
Yeah,
fun.
man.
It's I with Frasier all the time. It's at these cons. I'm sitting on a couch opposite him, and people are
Yeah,
just drifting in and forth and chatting.
yeah,
And it helped it that kind of helped me get rid of my imposter syndrome as well.
yeah,
Over time, I was just like, I know these people. And
yeah,
but then I was mentioning the zealousness of life
yeah.
earlier. Um, you know, I managed a record store in well, I mentioned the one in Evanston, and I also managed one in Seattle for a while, towards the end of the '90s.
Yeah.
In Evanston, I had Scottie Pippen from the Chicago Bulls come in looking to buy
Oh,
incense.
wow.
What kind of record store doesn't have incense?
I
Well,
know, right?
this one, sorry. um, I managed a video game store for a while in Reno, Nevada, and Sinbad, the comedian Sinbad,
Of course,
came
yeah.
in. Yeah, he came in looking for a memory card for his PlayStation.
Nice. Nice.
And the record store up in Seattle, all the time. Courtney Love came in, and I acted as basically as her personal shopper
Nice.
for an
Yeah.
hour, walking around the store, finding stuff for her to buy.
Yeah.
Um, Mark Lanigan from the Screaming Trees used to hang out in the front of our store waiting for his heroin supplier to show up on the opposite side of the street.
Yeah.
Um, one of my regulars who was on a first name basis with me was oh, and now I'm drawing a blank on his name. Guitarist for Pearl Jam. Um,
Yeah.
oh God, I want to say Jeff Ament, but no, it wasn't Jeff. But he'd come in and be like, "Hey Ben, how's it going?" Um, Sky Saxon from Sky Saxon and the Seeds died owing me $20, $20.
Wow, that's something. Yeah.
So just I'm they're just people. They're just they're just people, and
Yeah.
there's no reason to feel like an imposter.
Speaking of Zelig, you know who my cousin is? Oh, well, one of my cousins, Bibi Hansen, the mother of Beck, which means that Beck is also my cousin. And I just
There
recently
you
found
go.
this out, right? We're totally related. And I
There
was
you
also
go.
recently I was talking to one of the contributors to the Bowie book is Hannah Breschart, aka Space Cadet. You know, David Bowie is the commander, and I'm a space cadet, right? And I was just messaging with her, and I was talking about, yeah, I'm working with all these legends, and you're a legend, and Tony Zanetta was like the road manager for Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars, and he played Andy Warhol and Andy Warhol's Pork. And I said, my God, all these people, I'm working with, David J. Haskins from Bauhaus, the man who wrote Bela Lugosi's Dead. She said,
Hmm.
you're a legend. I was like, I like what we're saying here, Hannah Burchard, you know. And so I've just, and what it was, I think put me over is because when I interviewed my friend Tony Zanetta, um, and for the Bowie book, and then he kept talking about David, 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 and I was like, it really brought it home, and how David Bowie, formerly Jones, when he was 7 years old, he said, I want to be a pop star. I want to be a pop star. And so it was Angie Bowie and Tony who kind of they co-constructed Ziggy Stardust. It
Yeah,
was
wasn't Zanetta in charge of Main Man, which was
Yes, he
an
was.
agency? Yeah,
And he also worked with Iggy Pop. And he's
yeah.
one of the sweetest guys. He's one of the nicest people. A lot of these you know, legends are just really, I mean, I had briefly exchanged, messages with Patti Smith. And, it's just really, I think, and also like, I just want to, say like John Shirley, was one of the first people to endorse my work. And he did it again last year. And I just think, wow, I'd always, who was really, really, really good person and was really kind to me, Lemmy Kilmister. And I think what I remembered from that and my takeaway from that is like, if I ever get to any kind of place where where people are looking up to me or I'm influential,
Mhm.
whatever, I want to be as kind and respectful to them as Lemmy was to me. When I interviewed him, and I was working for as a writing tutor for LA Cal State Dominguez Hills, right? And I show up at this they did a press junket in LA. I show up. I was a staff writer for Brave Words and Bloody Knuckles, which is Martin Popoff, and I told Lemmy, I said, first of all, we have a mutual friend, name redacted. And he always say, "Oh yeah, so and so is great. I really whatever." And and then I said, "Look, and thinking, what the fuck are you doing, Alex? You don't dictate like time constraints to Lemmy Kilmister." But I'm also thinking, honestly, I don't care because, you know, a lot of rock stars are dicks, so I don't really care, and whether or not he responds to me, taking a chance, but I'm not really that concerned with what people think of me. And sat down and I got out a pack of smokes. I smoked for 30 years, and I was just like, we're out on the patio, like outside their hotel room with Phil Campbell, their guitarist for Motorhead. And I didn't start it right away because I was thinking there's a kind of an LA cool thing, right? You're there with Lemmy, so you don't have to be eager. You're a staff writer for Brave Words and Bloody Knuckles. So, and you've been commissioned to interview Motorhead, who you've already interviewed for Metal Hammer magazine, and you don't have to worry about, being eager, right? So I was just like, I get out a cigarette and I'm thinking, Alex, you're so fucking cool. You're being iconic right now, and one of these days you will be telling this anecdote. And so then I say, okay, so look, Lem, I have some time constraints, and I know that you don't care. And I said, but I have to be at my job. I'm a writing tutor for Cal State Dominguez Hills, and I have to be there. Like I can only really be here for about like 20 minutes at most. He said, "You'll never make it." I said, "I know, Lemmy, but anyway." So and then he was just, and then I started asking the name of the album was Inferno, that they were touring behind Inferno. And I said, let me, why Inferno? He said, don't ask such fucking obvious questions. And but he did it with like a little wink. I was like, oh man, you know just like let me just ring.
He's just giving you a nudge.
Right? Let me just read me a new asshole. And I'm like, thank you, man. But he was just like, he 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 stopped everything and he said, look, okay, so who's over there? And he said, I said, yeah, that's Slim Jim Phantom. Is it exactly? That's Slim Jim Phantom from the Stray Cats. Do you know Slim Jim? I said, yes, I do, Lemmy. And he's like, and then he starts playing. He had this like this ghetto blaster, and it was just this thing. You would think that they would be being Motorhead, that they would have some next level digital whatever, but they was just like this ordinary like boom box, right? He starts stabbing at it with his steely knives. I mean, his like his paws. He was manhandling it. He was like playing it. It was like it was fucking, you know, um, he was like he was in a pitched battle with this thing, right? Like, what the fuck, man? So he finally he's batting it around and bitch slapping it. Finally gets it to play, and he plays this short little burst. He said, "You know who that is?" And it's a guitar solo. He said, "You know who that is?" And I was like, "Who is that?" He said, "It's Steve Vai. Do you know Steve Vai?" And I'm like, yeah, I've interviewed him, and he's one of the, greatest guitarist ever who ever lived. He said, yeah, it's fucking Steve Vai, man. And he starts to play air guitar, and he had this beatific look in his face, Benjamin, like he was just in next level ecstasy, right? And then he takes me, okay, so he's like, okay, so we gotta do this in my room. So then I'm thinking, wow, are the rumors, about Lem being possibly, bi-curious or whatever? But so then I'm sitting on his hotel bed and I'm like, holy shit. So
What's happening next?
what's happening next, right? And he's plying me with cigarettes. And I was like, wow, what's going on? But we were surrounded by press and and I'm looking in the hotel in the closet and there's the hat. It's like there's the hat. There's the cavalry hat that he had. And I'm looking, there's Lemmy. He's like, and then, I told my then friend, not so much now, but Tequila Mockingbird, like many years later, I told her this incident, and she said he was trying to seduce you. And it's like, is that what was going on? Because the rumors are not true. I mean, he wasn't by anything. He was just really, really kind, and he wanted to make sure that I got to my job on time. Like that is the kind of person he was.
Well, and that's like my encounter with Harlan
Yeah,
when he phoned me up. I wound up being late to work that day myself,
yeah, right?
and
Exactly.
I had to get off the phone saying I really really hate to leave, but
Yeah, yeah,
I have to go open up the store.
yeah, right?
Wound up opening up an hour late, and the shop owner was he was irritated, but it didn't matter. Harlan
Yeah,
Ellison called me. It was something
exactly.
he did not have to do. And then the box of autographed books. It was one of the sweetest things. And yet at the same time, there were other writers, people who had just recently sold their first novel, or just recently had become pro.
Yeah.
Yeah, acting like how dare you talk to me, pleb.
Right.
So what do you do? I prefer people who keep it real and
Yeah.
and kind of keep it street level.
It's
That's
the only way. I mean, it's the only way. One of my friends that I made back in the same time that I met, I first met Poppy slash Billy, was Paul M. Salmon. And because he heard from my friend Thomas Roche that I was interviewing people for this, that I was like doing some interviews. I was interviewing, I interviewed Krista Faust. I interviewed Nancy Kilpatrick, Poppy Bright, a bunch of people around that same time. And then my friend, Tom Tom Roche was told Paul that I was doing these interviews, and he said, "Well, Alex should interview me because I did, by that point, and Paul had this already amazing decades-long career, and he was embedded on the set of Blade Runner. He'd been
wrote wrote the book.
wrote the book, Future Noir, The Making of Blade Runner,
Mhm.
did the first like Soviet US animated film, collaborative film, worked on RoboCop 2, you know, Conan the Barbarian, Dune, and and besides editing, the splatterpunk anthology, still the standard, right, for splatterpunk's extreme horror, still the standard. And so then I got a call from Paul, and we did this back and forth. He was really, really, you know, he kind of rewrote my whole, he basically fed me the questions, and then he wrote he just like, I was basically like an auto server, for like one of those baseball pitching machines. He gave me literally a list of questions to ask him. And so I was like, okay, so he faxed me a whole bunch of stuff. I sat there with these fax papers, drinking overpriced coffee and smoking like a fiend. I did that at this yuppie cafe in Pasadena, and and you know that was for Cyber Psycho's AOD. And at the time I didn't know Shirley, I didn't know Jeff Thomas, but that magazine had original stuff by, I think, Willem Pugmire, Jeff Thomas, John Shirley, and and so there, the interview that I did with Paul was just the beginning of a friendship that's lasted more than 30 years. And he contributed an original story to the Black Sabbath book. And he's writing me an original piece for the Clive Barker book. Again, so or a returner, who else is writing an original piece? Well, Caitlin R. Kiernan, who
Hmm.
literally collaborated with Clive Barker, and Lauren Soares. So,
Yeah,
and we're,
these are
we're
names.
right. We're
These
also
are
having, I'm
tough.
I'm having Lauren and Paul on the show, so as well. So, you know, at a certain point, goes from, the weird thing is that I've managed to have more than 30-year career in horror without ever selling any books, without being distributed by anybody. I can't get my books in bookstores because they're Amazon. I've never even been considered for any of the awards, and nobody knows who I am. And yet people like John Shirley praise praise me. Ada von Belcom, Jeffrey Thomas wrote the foreword to my new short story collection. And it's weird because I still have that hangover of imposter syndrome. So I guess Nocturnicorn Books and Alex S. Johnson is the best kept secret in in horror, right? Because nobody watches these shows, and yet we had Ado von Balcom, we had Mimi Pond, who wrote the first episode of a little show called The Simpsons,
Yeah.
right? Who was a friend of my dad. And having you on, Ben Adams,
Well,
well, no, I'm serious, man. We need to kind of collective paw us over this imposter syndrome. So let's talk about a collective paw.
yeah. Collective paw. There
Right.
it is. It's in frame.
It is I keep sort of rehearsing what it is, because we even had the pauses. We even had the pauses. So one of Ellen and my good friends, along with Nicole H. Six and Elias Celeste Williams. Shout out to Pickles. Okay, you're my heart. Shout out to Pickles. Ellen, Nicole, Aaliyah, and I are the four paws. we developed this book, this principle, a manifesto, and one of the contributors with original work is Ron Whitehead, and we had him on the show several times. Ron Whitehead, for people who don't know, is you ever heard of a guy named Hunter S. Thompson? Right. Hunter S.
Mhm.
Thompson wrote famously said of uh of Ron that he is crazier than nine loons, and his poetry is a thing of pure mathematics. I'm paraphrasing, but so he was a close friend of Hunter S. Thompson and William S. Burroughs and Allen Ginsberg and Lawrence Ferlinghetti. He published Jimmy Carter. He collaborated with the Dalai Lama, and he's a beautiful cat, man. He's a native son of Louisville, and he's he's also two-time Nobel Prize for Literature nominee and a Pulitzer Prize nominee. The man is a really good person. And he was on the show a couple of times. We had the Pausies with Emily Frank as well. Emily Frank is a also autistic, very much of a brilliant person. She's, among other things, she was on the board of directors for Beyond Baroque Literary Arts Center, and she was, got a award for her, or she was recognized for her contributions to the arts by the city of Los Angeles, and so she and I and Ellen and Pickles and Nicole and Ron were did the pausies. And so they're basically the collective paw award, because it's an award as well, is recognize you know what's coming up, right? And so recognize somebody for not only achievement in the arts, but also um, well, meritorious recognition for being a good you know a good, I guess, essentially ethical person. So I'm officially inducting you into the order.
Man.
There's no like ritual or anything. It's not like, you know, like nothing with a hat or secret, you know, or shake or something. It's just like it does come with a squeezy hug. And it's sort of like I'm recognizing you as somebody that has a good heart, somebody who's kind, obviously is most concerned with works of imagination, and and really I think I was just watching that movie that was partially based on Maybury's books. It's called Black Panther Wakanda Forever. And I was just rented that the other day. I still got it for like maybe 12 or 13 more hours. And I was just looking at that, I was watching this movie, and I expected it because I'm not a really huge fan of the more Marvel whatever or multi whatever thing. But I was like so impressed as I think, well, the heroes are black people and brown people. And you know, it's normal. They've normalized having girls and women who are black and brown as the heroes. And I thought, damn, Skippy, this is powerful. It's a powerful, I thought, this is what I'm talking about.
Well, my wife is black and she's my hero.
Nice.
So
Yeah. It, it's beautiful.
it is it is beautiful. That movie it got some flack. There were people who were upset that they didn't recast the Black Panther as a man.
What?
When in the comics it is his sister who takes over the mantle. Um,
Exactly. Yeah.
so it's
Isn't that kind of like the whole point?
and I yeah it was a very very I I agree with what you're saying there, and I mean just regarding women in general. One of the two novels that that I wrote earlier this year, which is currently being looked at. Um, Although it's it's kind of a fever dream of a novel. It's not really. It's kind of a howl about the way the world is right now and
Wow.
politics the name of it is Colony. Um, but the heroine in it is a Hispanic woman, I said to my and it was one of those things where my imposter syndrome almost kicked in, and because I think it's fair for indigenous people and people of color to be like, why are you writing about this if it's not your story?
Yeah. Yeah.
But the story I felt was bigger than that, and it was best served by having her
Yeah.
as the main character. And then I've I really I like having strong female characters in any way, which is why I'm enjoying writing the Judith and her friends and your book. Yes,
Yes. No, I mean, that this seems
strong female character.
like,
You've got
yeah,
uh,
identify as strong female.
yeah.
Yeah. So,
Well, and I feel, I mean, we all have a bit of each other in us anyway.
yeah.
It's um, the Judith stories, which you now have two of
Yes.
for your books. Judith is kind of a female version of me
Yeah.
um, in those stories, and the writing those has just been an absolute joy, bringing kind of life to this group of semi reprehensible but very smart young women um, who they do some good things, they do some terrible things, but they're people.
Right. Yeah.
We're I don't that actually we're all people, and we all kind of have a collective paw that needs to have a thorn taken out of it.
Right. Aw. Yeah. Right. This is like, we had Thomas M. Malafarina on the show last week, and he was talking about his pets, his cats and dogs, and he said they're like nice little people. And I said, well, that's a beautiful thing to say. And and I was thinking like maybe Collective Paw too, nice little people.
That's a
Right?
good subtitle.
Right?
Well, and that kind of ties in. Well, it's funny because my story for a collective paw, I think, is almost the diametric opposite of the
Yeah.
first piece that I wrote for you. That
Yeah.
really awful piece for the
Yeah.
Clive Barker
Yeah.
story, which to me is utter horror. Um, and then my story for collective paw is just a whimsical fantasy,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
fable about a cat lady.
Yeah.
Um, because you know I have two cats currently that are sundowning.
Aw.
So the owl, this is it's something that I'm dealing with right now, and that
Yeah.
story was my way of working that out.
Yeah. It's beautiful, man.
And I would give anything for them to be able to be kittens again,
I know.
and to be able
Yeah.
to be able to play with them again. But
Yeah.
they're little old men now,
Yeah.
and
Well.
at certain times of the day, it's just the wah,
Yeah. Right.
wah,
Yeah. Right.
starts kicking in, and
Get off my lawn.
it's over nothing.
Yeah.
They're just
Yeah.
standing in the middle of the room, just
Yeah.
confused because
Yeah.
they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, my dad is
at
like
that
that a
moment.
little bit. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you know.
And
He's also gone blind. He's got macular degeneration and
oh,
and glaucoma, and he's an artist. He's a famous artist. So you can imagine, and he's been driving since he was a kid, Now he can't drive. He's like 86 years old. He can't drive anymore. It breaks my heart, breaks my heart.
well, and and you suffer yourself with
Yeah,
your own disease and the pain
yeah,
that you get.
yeah,
For myself, I mean, talking about invisible illnesses.
right,
Um, besides having my besides the autism, um, ever since I had that surgery that I mentioned earlier in our talk 11
right.
years ago, I have had there's been a lot of invisible stuff that
Yeah.
has wound up affecting me at work. Making me, I've had to drop down to part time, and now I'm actually basically at home retired. I left my last job,
Oh, wow.
and we're making do, and it's part of why I'm able to get as much writing done as
Yeah,
I
yeah.
get done.
Well, thank God for that,
Um,
right? Yeah,
but even then, for the last year, I was only working 4 or 5 hours a day
right.
at a record store for a guy who I don't know why I kept working for him. He was MAGA, kind of a
Oh,
just
wow.
not a. He was the kind of guy who like a bootleg would come in and with like a bootleg Rolling Stones came in with a big picture of an uncircumcised cock on it,
Right.
and he slaps this down in front of our an employee who we knew was lesbian who wanted to be trans, saying, "Is this something that you and your girlfriend would like for your wall?"
What the shit?
Okay, that is how bad this guy was. But
Oh my God.
I remained working there because he valued what I knew about old records
Oh, okay.
and the fact that it would be really really hard to get someone to replace me.
Yes.
Um, but my attendance became really sporadic. I
Yeah.
dropped down to 4 hours a day. I was very clear about my limits and, hey, don't drop too much stuff on me.
Yeah.
And another person on the staff started complaining. And why do they get to blah blah blah? It's like, because I'm sick.
Right. Exactly.
Because I literally have physical illnesses
Yeah.
that affect me. Hello,
Right.
and just they would not stop whining about it and complaining about it to other employees.
Wow.
And
Nice.
it's serious. It was so unpleasant.
Oh my God.
It was a fucking nightmare. People, and this is I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. Everybody has an invisible story that I don't know about,
Exactly.
you know?
Exactly.
And all I ask back is the
Right.
same kind of respect, but a lot of people don't have it. Um, the same goes for people who make up their minds about somebody without knowing who they are,
Right.
and certain things that you've dealt with recently. We're not going to go into
We're not
names.
going to go into names, but
It,
we are going to say, thank you for that. That explicitly, um, since you did bring it up explicitly. Okay, I have been accused by a Shirley Jackson award-winning author who I first published. One of the first, I was one of the first publishers of this person, and I'm also identify as, I won't say, okay, so I've been interviewed by Queer Voices and by Steph Magister. So I recently did, if people want to look that interview up, Steph Queer Voices interview with Alex S. Johnson. And
Well, you're an ally. I mean,
I did,
Billy would not publish with you if you were not an ally.
you
Caitlin
know,
would not publish with you if you were not an ally.
my master's thesis for as a for my I have a terminal degree in English literature, right? And I was so inspired by Judith Butler's work. Judith Butler is basically the 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 founder of queer theory,
Mhm.
right? A huge inspiration for me. And I used Dr. Butler's work throughout my master's thesis, which was about a queer woman, a lesbian of color named Gloria Anzaldúa. And I will not reference the person's name because they don't deserve actually I shouldn't be giving them any oxygen, but because I promoted them to the status where they're, you know, pretty much leveraged the the fame that I gave them for publishing them in Axis of Evil, a heavy metal horror anthology, into becoming, doing the commentary for, Clive Barker's Hellraiser, the Arrow Films re-release. Also, this person who has accused me of being a transphobe is publishes with James Ward Kirk, who is a Trump voter, a MAGA voter, um, who deleted me on Facebook as a friend because I was saying not nice things about his favorite guy, Donald John Trump. Okay, he's also a big supporter of J.K. Rowling, and whenever anybody says anything
Mm.
about, J.K. Rowling, it's like, well, J.K. Rowling's great. Why do people have a problem with J.K. Rowling? I don't know.
Jesus Christ.
Maybe because J.K. Rowling, just one of the things, besides being a TERF, you know, um,
She
is a
financially supports
she
turfs.
financially supports TERFs. She literally fucking like funds hate, and she deliberately used the name of a famous, like, I don't know, like a sort of fucking Nazi or something, as the famous anti-trans person, as the guy who created like what the conversion treatment or something like that. It's basically like shocking, queer people out of being queer, like literal shock treatment. Robert something or other. So
Galbraith, isn't it?
yes, exactly. So J.K. Rowling is a hateful, evil bitch, and I'll use that language. I don't like that word, but I will use it if the shoe fits. So, you know, I'm not even mad at so and so, so and so, so and so. Um, their middle initial is D, because I think that they're just lost. They're a lost soul, to cite, Poppy. And I feel sorry for them, frankly. If anybody has to, you know, because in the end, when the fascists, I mean, they're literally snatching people off the streets right now. You know, President Trump has, created a concentration camp in the United States of America. He's federalized the troops. He's federalized he's
Oh
ended
yeah.
home rule in Washington, D.C. And so and so, and Paula D. Ash and I will be on the same side of the fucking, electrified barbed wire fence with each other. And she will look at me and say, are you still a transphobe? Are you still a hater? And I'll be like, fuck you, because I'm sorry. In the end of the day, we have literally been taken over by Nazis, and you're still claiming, it would be one thing if there was any validity to it whatsoever. But see, the thing of it is that it was entirely manufactured for clout, and I'm not even mad at her. I'm
My
not,
my
not even mad,
my son is a trans man, and
you know?
I would not publish with you if I saw any evidence of transphobia. I Everything I see shows you to be an ally. Everything that I see.
you know. We had
So
we had we had
that's
like
all I have to say.
Lasara Firefox Allen on the show. You know, we had who I'm also published, author of Genderqueer Menopause. Lyric Rivera, aka Neurodivergent Rebel, is a very famous transgender, non-binary transgender person who's endorsed by Forbes magazine. You know, friend of mine and a contributor. And so all I will say to those people and they're not it's not one person, it's not just Paula D. Ash. It's a whole cabal, who basically are going around saying horrible fucking things about me. And I would have to say, I feel sorry for you people, because when they round us up, we'll all be in the concentration camps together. And can you look me in the face and say I am, can you still look me in the face and say, Alex S. Johnson, you're a hater. You're just as bad as Donald Trump. You're just as bad as Matt Gaetz. You're just as bad as you know these people. I mean, seriously, you have to be fucking out of your mind, to say that. So I should really dial
Well,
it down. I wasn't even meaning to go there, but it's so upsetting. It's so upsetting to, not just me, but, the fact is that the same day that Paula sent me this horrific email, traumatic email, saying that, accusing me of being a transphobe. She said, I will not tolerate transphobia, was the same day that she wrote to my father, 87 years old, man, and we've been friends, mutual friends with my whole family for over a decade. And she wrote, I dearly care for Alex. At the same time that she still, to this day, publishes with James Ward Kirk. Now, tell me that's not hypocrisy. Tell me that, I mean, James Ward Kirk is very blatant about his transphobia and his love for some fucking MAGA. So tell me that's not hypocritical. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
yeah.
go there, but
What I'm going to say is people get weird and they get ideas into their head about who someone is,
yeah,
and it winds up being so hard to shake that. I mean, people have had the wrong idea about me. People have had the wrong idea about you. And the thing is, I mean, and this is possibly where I think, look, I'm fidgeting with my with my paw,
yeah.
um, where neurospiciness can come into it, because you know you're very enthusiastic about what you do.
Yes.
It's you post a lot about what you're doing, about the people that you know, because you're trying to get eyes on the press. You're trying to get people to notice
One
what's
love.
happening.
Yeah,
Um, at the same time, you're doing it on Facebook, which is a forum that throttles reach.
yeah.
The more that you post, it's also a place where
It's a whole ecosystem.
it's a whole ecosystem where people will take one thing out of context,
Right,
and
yeah.
then, as far as they're concerned, that's who you are.
Yeah.
And it's not healthy. It's why, I try to have other outlets, other forums. I use Blue Sky.
Yeah.
But the thing is most of my friends who I've made over the last 20 years are on Facebook. It was
Yeah.
initially a great way for me to keep in touch with people who I had met in Europe when I traveled
Yeah.
to the UK the first time, and it wound up spreading into more than that. But in a lot of ways, it's a cesspool. And if somebody is, and I don't know exactly what might have given anybody an incorrect idea about you.
I know exactly what it was.
So I
It was somebody who was a bad faith actor. Actually, it was a couple of people who who took a series of like in bad faith, messaged me on Facebook in order to do screen captures and screenshots of me potentially misgendering somebody, of a gender queer black person, and then when they had this info, these screenshots, they doctored them, and then they presented them to that person as though they were what I had actually said. And that started an extreme reaction where I've been blocked by a whole bunch of people who, who have been basically, when somebody blocks you on social media, that means that your activity is just frozen for them.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so they have
it's,
no idea what you're up to and they don't care.
yeah, it's literally like you're dead to them. And that sort of thing does happen. It
Yeah.
does happen, and I absolutely can believe that that happened. And the sad thing is, it is super easy to it's super easy to misgender somebody, especially if you knew them as the
Yeah.
now dead gender.
Yeah.
You can accidentally make that you can make that mistake so easily anyway, especially if you're 60 like we are.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
It's all we can do is keep trying and keep trying to be better.
Yeah.
And I see by the stuff that you do that that's who you are. So I've seen absolutely nothing to hint
Yeah.
otherwise.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing. So
So my thing is, and this is actually the originating incident. I won't discuss how this all began, but it wasn't, why, the person I supposedly misgendered or whatever. In fact, in that incident, this was a person that I had worked with, I'd been also friends with for a long time, and I brought on board horroraddicts.com. And this is a very quite prominent genderqueer black person. And as a matter of fact, they brought their partner on board when I was soliciting for a an eco horror anthology, which has since been died because of the whole of all the controversy. And it was taken over by some people who literally want to fucking kill me, and have made murder threats on see and that's all tied in with the Bram Stokers and the current, you know, the people who are the current incoming president of, I might as well say it because I'm never going to get a Bram Stoker award. Angela Rico Smith is involved with these people. And so anyway, the originating incident, so this person, this black genderqueer individual, that I known for many years, I'd brought on board, horror addicts, and I asked them, I solicited them, and they said, could my partner, contribute as well? And I said, sure, the more the merrier. And we had a little conference, and the first thing I said was, the first thing I asked, the first question was, what are your pronouns? Okay, so for somebody who's like, because it, I mean, it's a steep learning curve. And for me, like for example, I knew Poppy for many, many years as as a woman who's identified as a woman. So, I, as well as everybody else, have had to take that, climb up that learning curve. And it's a beautiful thing. And I love Billy Martin. I love Caitlin R. Kiernan. These are people I have very, very high respect for and warm regards for, as human beings. They're very cool people. And, Billy's husband, Gray Anatoly Cross, also, they're just, he just got out of a, operation for his heart. And I wish them well, I mean, we all love them, right? And so, I had, the first thing I always ask, what are your pronouns? Because you need to know. And every configuration is different, right? Some people will accept all pronouns. Some people are like, I prefer they, or whatever. It doesn't matter. I'm chill. Caitlin for a while was saying they, but then she's like she'll accept she as well, and has also been accused by some of the same people of being not just not only a transphobe herself or themselves, but also a white nationalist.
What?
Yes, some of the same people who are attacking me also attack Caitlin. And it started last year on Twitter, and she lost like 100 supporters.
I stay
It's
off.
a nightmare, yeah. Anyway, I didn't really need to or want to get, but it's sort of like an illness, it's a form of mental illness and insanity and a mass, sort of like mass hysteria or something, because, for years I was friends with Paula. I mean, we were good friends. We would talk every day. She was a warm supporter, and she was, and I'd actually shared my idea with her of doing something I still want to do called Riot Pink, which is a trans and LGBT sort of a resource guide. I may still do that. And we would talk all the time. And so it was sort of like, what happened to that actual friendship? It was very warm. I did that interview with her and at the time, and it was a very beautiful thing. And I was just friends with the whole, the family. She has a kid with her wife, and we were mutual friends with my dad too. And it's just like, what happened? Because I never changed. I never changed. I've always been the same person. I mean, I ever since when I was a teenager, like I've known, and I remember like when I first saw Rocky Horror Picture Show, right? It was sort of like, yeah, man, I want to be fucking Frankenfurter, I want to be. I realized more recently that I didn't just want to that I want to be Madonna. I want to be Britney, and once I realized that, it's like owning that. And I've got this character, Candy Fontaine, slutty detective, who's my alter ego. And it makes me feel, Ben, it makes me feel so powerful and so positive. And I love myself so much. And now, because I understand who I am now. And people like, Lyric Rivera and Caitlin and I mean, not just I never had that conversation with Caitlin. I did have it with Billy, but you know, just their being who they are is powerful, right? Being, you know, the first thing you think about with Caitlin, you don't think, oh, that's a transgender lesbian. It's like you think, well, one of the most interesting and literary voices of our time, certainly been, praised by the likes of Clive Barker. We don't talk about Neil Gaiman so much now, but the late great Peter
No.
Straub, Harlan Ellison, Poppy, of course, collaborated with Poppy Billy collaborated with Caitlin on Wrong Things, and we think, okay, so she's a fucking genius. She's her day job is paleontologist. So she's a paleontologist, right? She gets to work with dinosaurs, which is like a dream job for
Yeah.
anybody, for especially neurodivergent people. So you just think, cool as shit human being, super rational, super smart, super, you know, um, like relatable, right? And Caitlin says things that are so, simple and profound. You think, but you're is smarter than Einstein, right? And she just says things that like we're all like, but that's so true, and like everybody is like, wow, what Caitlin said, whatever. Yeah, man, that's so true and rational and normal, you know? And so I think with the beauty thing is that like with, is referencing like the Wakanda Forever movie, right? I think with the collective paw is an ethos, what we're moving into past the tipping point where neurodivergent people, queer people, people of color, whoever, describe yourself, African Americans, Africans, Rasa, Familia, Asians, women, disabled people, neurodivergent people, animals, and we're all recognizing that we're interdependent. It's not bad to say, I'm, I have, as awesome as I am, I have, you know, only finite resources. And, you know, like I have a friend, Jocelyn Page Kelly, who has a, a kidney, several major health problems, but she has she's on dialysis for her kidneys, and doesn't let shit stop her. I had one of my students, actually, I'll tell you this because I'm like I sort of need to because of my brain is disintegrating. So I kind of need to, you know, sort of piggyback on myself. And so I apologize if I sort of ramble, but um the one of the first people who endorsed me and gave me a job and that led to my being an editor was a guy named Tom Sullivan, and I'll show you one of his books. Yeah, Tom Sullivan, um, best known for If You Could See What I Hear. Right, which was made into a major motion picture. He was a Harvard graduate, was a journalist for Good Morning America, sang the national anthem, for at the what is it? What do you call it? Is this the Super Bowl? I don't know. I don't watch sports, but that's a Super Bowl, I guess, or is it the Super Bowl? Yeah, Super Bowl, right? As a guest on Oprah Winfrey. This is a guy. He made me his editor. Okay, Tom Sullivan, known to many as an actor, singer, entertainer, and author and producer, was born prematurely in 1947 and given too much oxygen while in an incubator. Though it saved his life, it cost him his eyesight. Tom spent the early part of his career pursuing music and eventually gained national prominence with appearances on The Tonight Show, a major recording contract, and a steady stream of gigs in Las Vegas, right? Hey. From there, you head to TV as a special correspondent for ABC's Good Morning America, while guest starring in Designing Women, Highway to Heaven, Fame. Remember Fame?
I remember Fame.
Right? MASH, Mork and Mindy. They wrote a special character, you know, for him to play in Mork and Mindy and a little show called WKRP in Cincinnati. Tom has been nominated twice for Emmy Awards, as the only living recipient of the Helen Keller Lifetime Achievement Award, has spoken at over 3,000 corporations, and universities, and has written 9 books for children, youth, and adults. Well, when I was working as a senior secretary for a firm in LA called EDA, Electronic Data Associates, he and Betty White, his collaborator, were clients, and Tom would call in every day, and we got to talking a bit like your Harlan Ellison story. And, he found out that I was a writer. And he said, oh, say, so what are you doing being a secretary? I was like, well, so I get to work with you fine people. It's like, I don't know, you're Tom Sullivan, man. He says, you know, I know, I know my limits. I'm not a writer, I mean, I don't know if he exactly said, but he said something to the effect like I'm a writer, and I can always use, you know, input. I can always use input. And he said, he made me his editor. He said, you're going to edit my book. I said, really? Don't you have an editor like you're a publisher? You publish with, Tom Wiley and Sons, I think I was right. He said, no, I want you to edit the book. In the book, I'm going to give you for credit for editing it, but I'm also going to thank the editor, right? So officially, I was not on the I was not on the staff of the publisher, um, but I did edit the entire thing. He did, credit me. He said, it's called Seeing Lessons, 14 Life Secrets I've Learned Along the Way. And he said, Alex has, edits with joy and candor, which is one of those beautiful things I've ever, this guy is a beautiful cat, man. And and he invited me to his house. I was so imposter syndrome myself out of that. I was like, well, Tom Sullivan is being nice to me. But his endorsement of me, gave me the confidence when then a few years later, I got the gig of writing an official Jason X spinoff,
Yeah, with
right,
Pat Cadigan.
with Pat Cadigan. And the late Nancy Kilpatrick was also, I don't really want to talk about her, but Pat Cadigan, man, I was a huge fan of Pat's. And when I found out that Pat was, you know, involved in writing the first two, I was like, because she's collaborated with William Gibson, I was like, oh my God. And she's got that great wit. I mean, the great, you know, it's her stuff is incredibly funny and offhand and flip. And it's like if people really, my book got terrible reviews, but what I think most of the critics didn't understand is that it's a really it's just a spin-off of what Pat was doing. And Pat had some outrageous concepts, like, for example, an entire planet that's just devoted to like Jason archives. You know, you know, um, I think I came up with the Department of Jason Studies at New Harvard. Um, she came up with the part where he, how we discovered the hyperdrive, which is kind of like going back to Harlan Nelson. You know how Harlan had that thing about, you know, kind of one of his, you know, legendary descriptions of a kind of a common trope in speculative fiction, where you have a character get into an impossible situation. And then instead of resolving the issue and saying how they did, you just, and afterwards, you know, and so Pat did a kind of you know, she did something really cheeky. She explained the invention of the hyperdrive, which is kind of a science fiction cliche. First of all, as I pointed out in my novel, Death Moon, a hyperdrive couldn't function because of the rate of relativity reaches critical mass. So, like, the rate of relativity, if you're trying to escape light speed, then essentially, like, the only way out is a wormhole. I'm sure I'm getting geeky, but I'm sure that this is right in your wheelhouse, right?
Yeah.
And so I said literally a hyperdrive, according to our present knowledge of physics, is impossible. Even Carl Sagan had a wormhole, right? Wormholes are very popular in science fiction because a hyperdrive is impossible. But how Pat solved the problem, she didn't. She said, "Oh, we traded the technology of the hyperdrive with these sentient aliens for literally like a whole bunch of frozen human cadavers and some weed." Some fuck. I mean, she just like and some weed. I was like, I was reading this with tears in my eyes, going, "Oh, holy shit! You were high as fuck when you wrote this, weren't you, Pat?" In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if she was just high all the time, man. I think she was an early adopter, because there's lots of like it's dwarf cannabis bud to be specific. Right? I was like, oh, Pat Cadigan, you and your shenanigans, right? So I think she's hilarious. Anyway, I'm very fond of it. There's a 10 and a half hour, audiobook of it on YouTube. And I got the shit ripped out of me, but at the same time, the same people who were ripping it a new asshole also like I think that they have a grudging respect for it. And I use I incorporate the term reality hacking in the book, which at the time the reason is because I was at the I think it was like one of those things for the it was one of the goodie it was a goodie at one of the cons. You may have been there too. It may have been the Atlanta con where there was an one as part of the goodie bag. There was a book called Southern Fried Horror or something, and there was a
I missed that one.
it was it had a chapter from an early draft of Exquisite Corpse, which never made it to the final book that had to do with reality hacking. And I I asked Billy Poppy then permission, 2005, to use reality hacking, and she said, "Sure, I don't think I'm ever going to use that again." Because she's sort of, I've never spoken with Billy as Billy, but I remember that Poppy had a very distinctive sort of a drawl like that, and I don't think that I'll ever use that again, you know? And so I was like, okay, cool. So I used that. What I discovered um, more recently when I became friends with Ken Goffman, aka Are You Serious, the founder of Mondo 2000 magazine, and shout out to Ken Goffman, is that he was the one who came up with reality hackers.
Hmm.
So that was, in fact, it was the early version of Mondo, which became Wired. And so it's all, and Ken's always talking about the singularity principle. So, which is kind of like where we are with Collective Paw. I think I'm babbling freely because I just wanted to get all of that out in one, disgorge it in one chunk.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right. It's out.
you're right. It's out. Yeah. So I want to like do a palate cleanser of all that, you know, negativity. I didn't really mean to go there. And look, I'm not a negative person at all. Considering what I experience on a daily basis, I have a neurodegenerative disorder, and people have been not only unkind to me, but murderous towards me. People have made fun of my brain condition, my brain trauma, and even suggested explicitly by sending me a 100 pack of razor blades with, suicide instructions that I should kill myself. And
Hey,
they even told me how. And this person was an associate of an associate of an associate of Jeannie Rector from the horror scene, who's also accused me of threatening her for 2 years, and also that she took out a restraining order against me with Yolo County Sheriff's Department. I don't even fucking live in Yolo County. So it was like, where do these people get off, Like,
there's
I don't,
it,
it's just crazy.
that well the whole in I mean look, we're both quirky.
Yes, we're quirky.
Well, there
Quirky.
are people who are way hella quirkier.
Yeah. Right.
And some of them can kindly be described as being complete loons.
Okay.
And you know, God, I some of the stuff that just in fandom alone, there are people who have very definite mental conditions who it's like they go pick an enemy today.
Right.
Whose life am I going to ruin today?
Right.
And then they haul off and do it. And they'll do it in posts, they'll do it in cartoons, they'll do it in fan fiction. They'll
Right.
they just it it's just part it's unfortunately it's just part of the world that we live in, especially dealing with science fiction and fantasy. there are a lot of people who can't deal with the distinctions between the real world and the fantasies that they're building in their own head.
Yeah.
And some of them even manage to get form fan clubs, and some of them publish fanzines, and some of them even wind up getting published professionally. And it is what it is, and you got to protect yourself. And it's one thing I've learned is that hurt people,
Yeah.
and I want to give people the best benefit of the doubt that I possibly can. But if they turn around and hurt me,
Yeah.
it's well,
Right. Yeah.
and yeah, it's one thing, when I think back to that, how hurt I was when the mini silly little brouhaha over my goth article
Yeah.
for uh, for the HWA newsletter when
Yeah.
that happened.
Yeah.
Um, I'm past it at this point,
Right.
and I really really like and respect some of the people who were involved with that.
Yeah.
And I don't have any, they reacted in a way that was consistent with their worldview of what they thought it was about. I wrote it from the worldview of what I thought it was about, and how I had been living it. I wasn't a skinny guy who could, I've always I've got a I've I'm a big guy. I'm 6'3". I've never been skinny as such, except when I've been seriously ill. I'm not the kind of guy who can pull off the, wearing the fishnets
Yeah. You're right. Yeah.
or what have you. And earlier you were holding up the magazine with the beautiful goth models in
Oh,
that,
yeah. Right.
and
Yeah.
that's yeah, the best I could do, is when my hair was a bit longer, and I wasn't balding as I could. Yeah, my God, Jarbo. That's Jarbo, isn't it?
No, it's actually the gal from Diva Destruction.
Oh my God.
Although
It was very reminiscent of some photos of Jarbo around.
although thank you for saying Jarbo, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but shout out to Jarbo, right?
Shout out to Jarbo.
Jarbo, okay? So please continue. Yeah.
Anyway, um, the best I could pull off was wearing black and teasing my hair up and looking like fat Robert Smith. That was the best I could do.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
You're not gonna be this dude. You're not
I'm
gonna be
never,
this
I'm
dude.
never,
Yeah.
I'm
So
never going to be that guy.
yeah.
And some of these people they were people who could pull off the look, and they could
Yeah.
pull off being in that element of the subculture, which is a
Right.
beautiful part of the subculture.
Yeah. Yeah.
That it's fantastic. I wasn't. I was geekier. My friend, my friends in the pen pal goth community that I
Yeah.
was into before my wedding, they were, you know, they were girls and guys who were getting mocked for their looks, for being
Right.
goths by
Right.
by you know by the normies. And
Yeah.
that was my take on it. My take was, we're all, we all like the darkness. We all like
Right.
that every day is Halloween.
Yeah.
Why don't
This is like from Zero Tolerance magazine. That's Genesis
that?
P. Orridge and Psychic TV, right? They
Yeah,
certainly invented it, right? I mean,
yeah.
pretty much.
Um, but that was, so when I wrote that piece, that was my take on it,
Right.
and my take wasn't the same as theirs, and But man, but I got dragged, and that sucked. But it's okay, you know. Hey, it's 30 years later.
Angela fucking Gassa, right? You know, this wasn't my interview,
See,
but I
see
did.
the guy with the beard over on the right. Actually, at one point, I actually looked like that.
Okay,
The beard. I had hair down to here.
right.
My hairline was still, you know. And
Yeah.
that was when I was managing the record store in Evanston, Illinois. That was how I looked. And
Oh, this is my interview with Kevin Key from, let's talk about from Skinny Puppy, right?
uh,
Right?
huge favorite.
Yeah.
But you know, it's but at the same time, I I want to say I think that they were being protective of the way that they saw the scene themselves.
John Carpenter. That I'm reproducing this one in the Halloween book. John Carpenter, ladies and gentlemen.
And anyway, I'm just trying to say, you know, I can kind of understand where they were coming from when
Yeah.
they opted, but still, you know, if you go out of your way to hurt and mock other people, you were probably hurt and mocked yourself by somebody.
Actually, that's kind of gives me an idea. I've been thinking about this since you broached the subject. I think it's very interesting. One of the things that we can do with speculative fiction is speculate. For example, we could have a alternate universe version of that incident in which we could explore two dueling realities, one of which involved goth as a suburban, mall goth phenomena that was your world, and
Right.
and and the goth of, the ultra cool kids like, Krista Faust, Caitlin Arkiernan, and Poppy Z. Bright, right? And Nancy Collins, of course. And so that way, I think that would be really interesting to kind of like speculate in an alternate, sort of a slipstream way or something, like have the two realities kind of, you know, coincide,
You
and
know, it's interesting that you say that because looking back at it, the piece that I wrote probably accurately described what would wind up being mall goths.
right,
You know, the hot
a
topic
hot
type.
topic, exactly, yeah,
Before hot topic was a thing. I mean, we had when I lived in Northern California, we had to go to San Francisco to buy Manic Panic.
right,
You know, we had to go to the big city.
right, yeah,
You know, I don't think we you could even find Manic Panic in Sacramento at that point.
yeah,
It you know, you had to make the trip down, and then you were there, and you know the people on the scene, they were the cool kids,
right, yeah.
the ones who actually lived there. They lived it,
Oh my
you
God.
know. And those of us from the suburbs, we were like, oh,
I was never I will tell you I won't tell you their name, but okay. So say a person who is no longer really a friend of mine, who is a big deal author and a central part of that world of the, San Francisco, the kind of the explosion of like zine culture, alternative culture, industrial culture and whatever. And anyway, who may or may not have dedicated a gay vampire book to me, anthology. Um, and when I showed up and was visiting this friend in the 90s in San Francisco, and I had just gone off of my marriage had just broken up, and it was devastating. Just found out that my wife had been having an affair on me the entire time, and we'd only been married 8 months, right? And I was wearing, I'd just been to like a Fangoria convention. I'd bought a, this is irony considering that, what John Shirley has said about me, but anyway, I was wearing like a crow t-shirt. I had multiple piercings, and my hair was dyed blue black because Trent Reznor, because why not? I fucking love Nine Inch Nails, right? And absolute adore them, still do. And so, and this guy said, well, he said, oh, you're far too straight to pass muster with, like the really cool kids. Like you would never make it
Yeah,
in my
you're not a
world.
tiny little skinny model.
Right. And I was sort of like, so now I think, the fact that I would just like, for one example, okay, the first William S. Burroughs tribute anthology that we did called Just One Fix, after the Ministry song, of course. Um, and Just One Fix, a literary salute to William S. Burroughs from the pages of The Junk Merchants, too. We had, let's see, we had an excerpt, we had um, the original context of RAP by Poppy Billy was a piece that was written for I think I might have it actually, that was originally written for the Purple Prose newsletter. And it faces my interview with Krista Faust in the original. It's a pretty much a necrophiliac ode to, the recently deceased William S. Burroughs, in the vein of William S. Burroughs, in which Poppy fantasizes about fucking his corpse. And
Oh, fun.
so I actually reproduced in just one fix. I reproduced the that story in the original context with a kind of a rant. It's literally called A Rant by Poppy Z. Bright, and the excerpt from my Krista Faust interview. At the time, she was married to David J. Scow. I was the person who
That's pretty, yeah, hardcore.
introduced Krista to this person who said, I'm too straight. I also was the first person to talk up Caitlin R. Kiernan with this person. And I'm also the person who got Krista Faust on board with New Line Cinema. So shout out to Krista Faust. Uh, hey, but if y'all are too cool for me now, so this was the first time that I published an original essay by William Taylor Jr., Kathy Acker Award winning poet, author, and you know, um, great guy. It's actually a cut up interview. Um, an original piece, an original poem about the accidental shooting death of Joan Volmore Burroughs by William S. Burroughs. I mean, you need to slow down. Like one needs to not rush these things and savor it because this is culturally monumental. The first post Bauhaus original, as far as as far as I know, the first post Bauhaus, post David J. Haskins, Love and Rockets, and solo career, um, original poem that was ever published outside of his own publishing ventures, like his memoir, Who Killed Mr. Moonlight, that he wrote for me, and it's called El Hombre Invisible, but the man who wrote Bela Lugosi's Dead, right? So and those are just four pieces. Maxim Jakubowski wrote an original piece for me about smuggling the original Olympia Press edition of Naked Lunch out of Paris to give to a guy named Mike Moorcock, who gave it to a little known a little known author named J.J. Ballard. And, that was an original piece that was written specifically by Maxim Jakubowski for me. We had a never before in print um, uh, uh, essay by, Graham Masterton, you know,
Mhm.
uh, who, he gave it to us again to publish an original story by Bram Stoker award-winning author Lauren Hughes, I mean Lauren Hughes, Lauren Source. We have Reese Hughes as well. Original story by Reese Hughes. Original story by John Palisano. A story by John Shirley. We had shit. Um, and the full junk merchants, you know, we have original pieces by okay, one of the original pieces that we published, Stephen Johnson Leba. Okay. Um, big name. I mean, you know, he's in the archives collected by Stephen King and David Cronenberg and William S. Burroughs himself. And an original piece written specifically for the book series called Mootsie Tootsie by a woman named Carrie Lee Crum, founded a little band called The Runaways with Joan Jett, right? The Runaways, of course, went on to, lore and legend.
Oh yeah.
And, and like, so looking back, this person no longer writes. They have a job there for they work for a major HMO. And so I don't know, man. It's sort of a little bit poetic because, my ex-father-in-law was a Harvard guy. And like I said before, he worked for he worked at the Widner Library at Harvard. He was always making fun of me because I only attended UC Davis, right? Well, he's no longer with us. My work is in Harvard's flagship library. And I think this is kind of a lesson for people, especially people who want to be gatekeepers of cool, you know, just remember the human, right? Remember that, you know, it's not it's not about the short term. If you're like in the Middle Ages, they had this concept of the Wheel of Fortune, which is where we get the Vanna White stuff, right? You know, it's basically karma, right? You know, in an era when in the Roman Empire, you could be a slave one day and you could own your former owner the next. Everything can change in a second. People become disabled. You never know what is going to happen. And so I think that people need to realize and understand that, you know, the people that they look up to, all the cool kids, and Caitlin, Billy, and John, Shirley, all of us, we all struggle. We're all disabled. We're all disabled. So that kind of
Yeah.
attitude is like, oh, I'm in a, you know, whatever with, I'm in a whatever with whoever, um, we are people. Some of us are crap people, but I think we're all, and even I will even give credit to Paula. I hope she gets some help. I really do. I think, I don't think anybody is not redeemable. And of course there are quarters, when they see this, there will be, I guarantee it, somebody will post something on one of the social media which will, go viral, or basically, Paula Diaz will say, you know what Alex is saying about me, and blah, 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 he's saying blah, blah, and I'll say again, for anybody who wants to look this up, look up James Ward Kirk, right? And say, tell me whether James Ward Kirk's blatantly transphobic comments, which he makes regularly, in fact, he will block people and delete people if they're anti-Trump, whether that's consistent with a, ferocious, let's attack Alex and accuse him of hate crimes, disposition. I'm sorry, rant over.
Uh, you know, poison pens. I shoot them. Just fuck them, Alex.
Yeah. It's like Burroughs once said, you know, um, you know, um, was it? Now, one of my favorite quotes is escaping me, but um, uh, fuck 'em all, squares on both sides. I am the only complete man in the industry.
Nice, nice burrows there. You know, on that note, I'm diabetic and I feel
Okay,
my blood sugar is
yeah,
taking a dive because I haven't
okay.
had my
Oh
lunch.
my God,
So
you poor man. So,
so on that note,
okay,
I'm going to conclude, but I just want to say it is being a pleasure working with you,
same here, man.
and it's a pleasure, you know, if I've helped pull the thorn out of your paw at all, or if I'm able to
Oh,
pull the thorn out of anybody's paws, that's
oh,
all we can do for each
all
other
we can do, right?
is
Is
pull out those damn thorns.
right. And I just want to say, to end this on a beautiful note, this is a love movement. This is all about kindness, dignity, transparency, integrity, and a squeezy hug. So I always like this is a tradition. It's not like a creepy ritual or anything, and you don't have to do it. It's not mandatory, but um, you know, generally speaking, it's a warm squeezy hug is how we end this.
Well, you know, and well, actually, I'm pretty lousy at,
One
but
one love.
back at you also with the
Yeah.
finger guns.
Yes. That was supposed to be a one love, but it became a inadvertent, the law of inadvertent finger guns, right?
It has been a genuine pleasure, and
Same here,
thank you
man.
so much.
Thank you. And I'll talk to you soon.
All right, you take care of yourself, man.
You too.
All right, bye bye.
Bye bye.